Today, we're going to be going over advanced user registration tips for WordPress. I'm your host, James Tryon, the LearnDash training specialist. I've been using WordPress since 2007. I'm one of the organizers of WordCamp Orlando. I'm the lead ambassador of Wapoos, which is the WordPress mascot. It's a little yellow fellow. It's usually on a pin or a sticker somewhere at a WordCamp. If anyone knows what a WordCamp is, it's been a while. I have 3 fantastic kids, and I'm a big fan of toys and Transformers. You can find me on Twitter at James Tryon or in the Facebook group. Today, what we're going to cover is how WordPress and LearnDash handle user registration, how LearnDash login registration pop-up works, free and premium options to help extend your registration, some tips for better user experiences, some use cases, if we have time, a demo, and then any questions and answers along the way. One thing we'll probably end up doing is taking this webinar and extending it to a live stream coding where we would extend some of the demos, maybe go through all the plugins we talk about today, actually maybe turn them on, set them up, play with them together, and sort of see how that goes. That'll probably be an hour to 2 hours sometime over the next week or so in the Facebook group. One thing that I want to say is I would definitely recommend to go watch the old user registration webinar. We're going to cover some of the stuff today, but we're going to go into we went into a lot more detail on some of the things we're going to be skipping over in the first webinar. The links to wherever this original post was, so wherever you signed up for this webinar, the slides will be there, and then when this video gets posted up to YouTube and then back to the Facebook group, the slides will also be accompanied there. So you will be able to get any of the slides and any of the links later on. Things you want to think about when you're working with registration is, are you going to leave the forms alone? Or are you going to leave it by default, or are you going to extend it or style it? I'm talking really aesthetics here. You want to worry about your emails. First off, you want to worry, are your emails even sending? We'll go into that a little bit more later. And secondly, are you leaving your emails by default, or are you customizing them? Meaning, just because someone signed up, are you leveraging that touch point to make sure it has optimum success for what you're doing? Today we're talking about registration, but that is something you want to think about while you're picking your options or figuring out which direction you might go while you're working on your courses and your actual environments. You also want to think about how you're selling. And something else to think about this with what I mean with how you're selling is if you end up changing your registration process, by default, if you're not using anything else, LearnDash has you register first and then you buy. But if you were to, let's say, sign up with WooCommerce and you don't have an account, you can create an account at the same time that you're purchasing. So you have the option of thinking, is this a 2 separate transaction thing? Is this a single transaction thing? Can it be separated? And then depending on what direction you might want to go, that would also change how you might create or extend your user registration. And we'll go into that a little bit more later. So understanding how LearnDash handles user registration. LearnDash uses user registration is actually WordPress registration. One thing that's kind of fun about this is LearnDash is meant to be leveraged in your environment. It's built as a learning management system first, and then there is other features that we can handle a lot of the logins or the restrict content and even payments, but it's meant to work in your environment if you already have a store or if you're extending your current business already. So it can do everything from the ground up by itself, or you can extend it using lots of different plugins, premium features, or custom code. It's very flexible. So a lot of times people wonder, how can I do X in LearnDash? Well, the question really is, how can I do X in WordPress? And you're going to find a lot more options. meaning user registration is really just a WordPress function. A LearnDash is leveraging the built-in core functions of WordPress and just displaying those forms in different fashions. We're not making our own form. We don't have a login system. There isn't a LearnDash user per se. It really is all the default system that we're leveraging with the core features to then extend that. So that might help think about a lot of things, actually, because a lot of features in LearnDash really are leveraging core features built to the best of WordPress standards, so things should technically just work. So one big problem is getting emails to send in WordPress. This is another tip. A lot of times the webinars have 1 or 2 tips in them, but since we're doing a lot of tips, there's going to be a lot more of these. And this is actually just go watch another webinar about how to get emails to send. But during this webinar, we go over 4 or 5 different ways that common problems and issues to make sure that your emails are sending, and how to make sure they send in a couple different host environments. Not to spoil the whole webinar there, but a lot of times it has to do with if you're in a shared environment, it's going to have to do with the cron. If it has to do with the way your email's being sent, the default WordPress way that's well over 10 years old, it uses a PHP function, and the way spammers have evolved for so long, your emails really have a PHP emails function is going to be reported as spam most times. So if you're using the default system, chances are your email will end up in a spam filter somewhere, and I would highly recommend to go through this webinar, utilize some of the tools that are there. There's several free options to make sure your emails don't end up in the spam inbox, and they always send accordingly with a proper cron on top of what the current system already has. Someone asked, can we get rid of the WordPress email configuration registration? You can, and we'll go into some of that options too. So by default, if you see the pop-up, or if you just want open registration where anyone can register, that's the system LearnDash uses. If you wanted to leverage like WooCommerce or something else, like WooCommerce can also use the default system, so I don't want to be too confusing there, but you can technically turn off user registration in WordPress and still have new customers register with WooCommerce because it's a different sign-up process. So WooCommerce is a different registration process than the default WordPress system, but we'll go into that in a little bit. And I apologize, I'm here by myself, and I'm not the best with names. I don't want to butcher it. I apologize. But the question was, can we get rid of the WordPress email configuration registration? And we'll go into that a little bit more later. This is, what about the pop-ups? And this is from the old slide deck, but what I mean is the WordPress, the LearnDash pop-up that everyone can install and use with our documentation to have a login or a registration window open in a pop-up, and you can register right from there. This is the instructions that on how to do it. It's the step-by-step instructions. Depending on if we have time today, we're going to do that. If not, the next live stream, we're going to go through all the demos and what I'm talking about today on how to do all of that. So it'll be less slides and just hands-on example registration pop-ups and stuff. So that'll be fun. Probably be next Wednesday or Thursday, but I'll have to check the schedule before we do anything. So in order to make the WordPress, the LearnDash pop-up work, you're going to need to be on the current version of LearnDash, which is 3.233 or 3.223. I don't know. You just have to be on 3+ in order to get the ability to have the LearnDash pop-up. You would want to make sure that the login registration is turned on. This the thing that I have, the box that I have are highlighted in pink. If you want a custom logo to show up on it, you can add your logo here. And you want to make sure that registration is turned on underneath general. Again, we'll go over that in a little bit. But if you do that, you're going to have the default settings. And if you wanted to extend that a little bit, and I have screenshots, so I would close this and show you, but 2 slides from now, I have screenshots of exactly what I'm talking about. But if you wanted to extend the default function a little bit, I actually have a simple plugin that's free to use that you can extend the user registration a little bit. And it's what we use on our actual demo.LearnDash site, and we'll go over that in a moment. So the next couple of slides are going to be about free and premium registration options. These are just plugins. These are not theme-based or these are standalone plugins or solutions that can be used however you would like in any environment. The key is if you're going to extend your user registration, you want to keep it simple. You want to make sure it's easy to use, and you want to keep it pretty, and not too pretty, because honestly, I would consider Google pretty, and Google over-engineers and almost over-designs. So it needs to be usable and simple and straight to the point, and you want to make sure that everything is just is easy to use. What you can do later on to leverage a smaller sign up is you can actually use something like gamification or use filling out their profile as part of the course credit, and you can award them more points or more course credit by having them fill out their profile after they've registered. So get them in the door and then fill out the rest of it. Now, there's one other option opposite to this, is what happens if you have a free registration, but you're paying for the course, and you're having too many people register, but not enough people are actually signing up. Well, you can actually start adding more inputs to your sign up, make it a little bit more involved, and by doing that, you're going to produce a higher quality lead for anyone who's filled it out. Again, it doesn't need to be complicated, and we'll go over real examples of this later on, but by increasing the actual cognitive investment of your user, of the questions you're asking and what you're asking, someone who's willing to fill that out and go to the end of that is going to be a higher value lead when they do fill that out when it comes to selling your course or whatnot. Now, again, this isn't something I would always recommend. This is only something that I would recommend if you have way too many leads, but they're not converting, or you're having tons of people sign up and no one's buying the course. I would add one or two filtering questions to maybe slow down the registers and help convert that. But that's an edge case example, but I thought it was fun to add it right next to the one about keeping it simple and small. We'll go over that. Okay. So a couple of things to think about, just so everyone can see, is I want to talk about this. This is the blue pop-up that I'm talking about with the basic LearnDash registration, which is here. I thought that would have been a little closer together. I apologize. But before we get to that, like I said earlier, LearnDash uses the default WordPress system. That means if you go to the normal login page, it's the same one that the pop-up's using. Because of that, I definitely recommend leveraging the LearnDash pop-up of some sort of pop-up or login system or front-end login with your courses. But I also recommend theming your default pages just in case anyone happens to go there. It just makes it look a little bit nicer. Both of these plugins here, the custom login page and the theme my login page, have free versions. If I was to pick one of them, I would only pick the custom login page. Meaning you can't have two working at the same time anyways, but I mean, if I was to invest my own time in one of them, I personally like the custom login page a little bit better than the theme my login. But both are decent and both have premium versions. Someone asked, you mentioned a cron for emails. What's a cron? Okay, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what the term cron stands for, but it comes from the term like cron job. And again, that's probably still a smaller term that means it's a larger abbreviation. A cron is something that happens on a computer on a timed basis. So a system cron would say every 30 seconds or every 5 minutes or every 2 days, do this task. That's how a normal computer system would run crons. And then when
you would have emails set up, and you hit to a queue, and when you have all your emails in the system ready to go out, a cron would run, and then it would trigger all the emails, and anything that hasn't been sent since the last time that cron was run would be sent out at that time. A lot of servers will send out crons minutes, 5 minutes. Some of them have like a 5-minute cap, but that's what it does. But by default, WordPress does action-based crons. So a normal server, a web server, does things based off time-based crons, and WordPress does things off action-based crons. And what that means is they don't always line up, or one doesn't always trigger the other. So when you're in a shared environment, sometimes it's a good idea. And I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus from hosting, because all of our shared hosts that are on our preferred client list are very good hosts. But for example, would be in SiteGround, I like to install an extra cron. It takes 5 minutes. In the other webinar, we talk about it. We give a detailed instructions and a video to how to do it. Take you about 5 minutes once you're logged in, and that's going to make sure every time you tell WordPress to do something, it actually is doing it, versus it getting lost and it's not showing up. Thanks, David. So as far as back to the actual presentation, I would recommend something like this. It's still the basic default WordPress login page, but it's adding custom CSS and making it look like the rest of your site. It's a simple add-on to do. I think it adds a little bit of extra class and value, especially if you're charging for your courses. It's going to make your courses feel a little bit more valuable, in my opinion. But on top of this, I would still recommend using our plugin or our pop-up system, unless there's another better system that you're using, and we're going to go over some of those. Now, this plugin, the Auto Login New User After Registration plugin, which is a very long title, is the plugin that we use to help extend our user registration on the demo site. It also helps somebody log in the first time automatically. So by default, when you log in, WordPress wants to send a user, they want you to verify it depending on how your setup is. This plugin will help you skip that, and you would still need you'd still get the email, your new registered email, but this just logs you in right away. So you fill out the registration, you hit submit, and it logs you in. What else it does is it gives you the ability to let your users pick their own password, set their username if they would, set their first name and last name if they would like. It lets you set several of the built-in profile fields on registration. Again, a couple of these are fine. I wouldn't recommend going too crazy with this if it's normal, a simple site, or nothing that requires any type of larger sign-up process. Like, we do have some medical clients that do have a very long sign-up process. They have to upload multiple forms of ID, and they have to get certified and state training every couple months. So their registration process is much longer than this. And they are going there to sign up and told to sign up. So it's a different experience versus possibly losing someone because your sign-up process is too long and they're a new customer. So you would always want to keep that in mind. But this plugin, free plugin from the repo, will let your users pick their password on sign up, let them agree to your terms, and let them pick their username and password. Now, as far as height goes, as you can see, if you enable everything, you're not going to really be able to use the pop-up accordingly, or if you're on a small screen, that can be an issue as well. Something to think about, your pros and cons when you're working on your own course. But this plugin will give you a lot of extra features for free, and it would extend the pop-up that you already have. Okay, so you could just let WooCommerce, Easy Digital Downloads, or whatever membership plugin you're using handle your registration. In fact, one of my favorite go-to ways to do this is this option. Like, leave the default WordPress, LearnDash sign up until I get the e-commerce set up. And if it's up to me, I know we have a lot of fans of Easy Digital Downloads, which I'm a huge fan of as well. But if you ever think that you're going to possibly sell an actual physical good, or have to ship something, or collect taxes, I would recommend to go WooCommerce over Easy Digital Downloads. If you're never going to sell anything besides your courses, Easy Digital Downloads is a much easier or simpler setup, if you will, but both are very good. And then regardless of what membership plugin you use, there's lots of options. In fact, we did a whole series. I think we have 5 or 6 webinars on memberships, on which ones would work best, and personally how I would set them up. Some membership plugins I recommend selling through WooCommerce. Some I recommend selling directly through the membership plugin. I would recommend checking out some of those and see which ones fits your need the best. But realistically, you could just use the WooCommerce default registration and not have to do anything, and it's quite nice. And so is Easy Digital Downloads. Again, anything that I'm talking about in our webinars, none of them are paid products to me. If I've used them, it's because I bought them with my own money, and this is really just educational. None of the links are affiliate links. Now, if you wanted to extend WooCommerce checkout registration, you can do this lots of ways. You can manually do it. I mean, or you can code it yourself. You could use something like advanced custom fields and have it do half the work, and you would still have to configure it a little bit. Or you can use something like this plugin that's $50, and it's going to allow you to extend your user registration and allow your users to edit their content in their My Accounts area of WooCommerce, which is really nice, meaning they wouldn't have to go to their My Profile in the back end of WordPress like the default system is. This is a nice improvement by using WooCommerce. Now you can edit your basic information in WooCommerce anyways, but if you happen to use this plugin, you're going to get the added benefit of having all your added custom fields in the dashboard of WooCommerce, where your user can update them and change them at any point. Another fun tip: if you go past the default, if you decide to customize your registration in any way, you get the ability to start leveraging and growing a list. I highly recommend growing a mailing list somehow, whether it be just grabbing the data and storing it on your own, or loading it into MailChimp or Constant Contact or Aweber or however you want. I highly recommend that you take advantage of this. And if you are going to make a custom registration, I would then also add a checkbox that says sign me up for your mailing list. And depending on your state and area, and I would probably look into the actual laws, but I always like to check it first and have them uncheck it if they don't want to be. It's still going to send them a double opt-in, that they're not instantly going to be signed up, but it does get the ball rolling, and you're going to get more sign-ups than opt-outs. So I would highly recommend adding some type of lead capture on top of your registration. I mean, there are already members, but that doesn't mean they actually bought something. So you want to get them into your funnels and start talking to them about all your other courses. And honestly, if they did buy one course and then they're in your funnels and they really like your course, well, the next time you release a course and you add it to your newsletter, chances are your current customers who are happy are going to be very glad to be returning customers. So I would leverage a newsletter sign up. Now, one thing that we're not really talking about in this webinar, and we talked a little bit about it in the first registration, would be user profiles and even the login pages. And the only reason I talked about these login pages here is because the login pages are the registration pages. They're the same view, just swapping things out. But I do think we can have an entire webinar on profiles and how to set up avatars, what Gravatar is for anyone who's not aware of that, and why WordPress uses a third-party system that they actually own, but links out, like how to set all that stuff up. So I think a upcoming webinar would be a great next step would be editing user profiles or extending user profiles or ease of use and getting them out of the admin. So let's keep going. So I think, again, everything I'm showing you today, there is options. There's free options. There's cheaper options. There's a couple versions you can get away with using free versions or coding it yourself if you want. But honestly, some of these for the price, they're worth it. There's a couple that are free that I'll get to later that are worth every penny of free. They're good, but I don't want to sound like I'm talking bad about them at all. There's just lots of options, and we'll go over some more. So page builders. Earlier we were talking about standalone plugins. Now we're going to talk a little bit about page builders. Every page builder is going to have their own version. Like Elementor, Beaver Builder, Divi, all of them are going to have their own version of a login block or widget, and they're also going to have the ability to have premium blocks or widgets that already exist. Case in point, Elementor used to, and they still might have the ability to do this, but they took their version in Pro and they're including it in their free add-on plugins if you buy their agency bundle or something. So technically, the plugin is free, but you have to have the Elementor Pro $169 level to get the plugin. So I feel a little unfair showing it, but I want to show what it does. And I do think it's a good resource if you happen to have Elementor Pro. And if you don't have any of the other tools we're showing, and you happen to be an Elementor Pro user, then it's a resource you already have, and it's a great resource. So the first one I'm going to show, and we're not going into a lot of detail. I recommend going and checking the site out. I don't want to be salesy for someone else's plugin either, but this is a $39 plugin for one license. And just like Elementor works, you can import templates. It has user registration form templates already set up. So they have probably 20 or 30 of them you can pick from different styles, different pop-ups, and then you can customize all of them. This is an example of a section. So for 30, I think it's like $39. Yeah, $39. You can import this whole section, and it can be anywhere on your Elementor site, and it's a registration system. Now, this doesn't necessarily tie to a checkout process. It might. I didn't research that far, but I do own this plugin, and it happened to have this feature. And I was like, that's cool, but I didn't buy it for this feature. This is the sign-up form that I was talking about earlier. So if you happen to have the one of the middle or larger tiers of Elementor Pro, you have access to the Ultimate Elementor add-ons, and it also has the same thing. They both do the same thing, a bunch of sections with a bunch of examples. They already all work. They're already registration forms. You can extend them if you would like, but they're a bunch of pretty presets. This one is technically free if you're at the 169 level. If you're not at the $169 level with Elementor Pro, this plugin does the same exact thing, $39, if you're an Elementor user. So standalone plugins. User registration and user profile. This is a very nice plugin. It's also a little expensive. It has tons of shortcodes, and it has its own user interface to build the form. So there's a lot of pros and cons there. I recommend watching the other webinar. We go into a lot more detail on this plugin. It is a very good plugin, and it's probably my top 3. It's probably gone down a lot since some of the other page builders have came out, and I personally own a lifetime license of Gravity Forms. So Gravity Forms is my usual go-to option, but this is a solid option. The next 2 options I'm going to be going over are very good options. As you can see, there's a version in the repo, and you can create this whole sign-up form. If you want to extend it, if you want to sync with WooCommerce, you have to buy their add-on. This WP Everest also has a user registration system. They have 2 tiers. Their free version will let you make registration forms. Their lower paid tier lets you sync with WooCommerce. Their higher paid tier lets you sync with LearnDash. I have not used this plugin, but several members of our community have. I have not heard anyone directly complain about it, and it's highly recommended. Like this screenshot's from yesterday, and it's on active. It's on 50,000 sites right now active, and it was last updated a week ago. To me, that's a pretty good plugin. I'm willing to try it in a dev environment, make sure it doesn't break. If it doesn't break, I'm willing to push it to production. And then if you want to extend it, you could technically register and sign people up for LearnDash directly with this plugin, or sell things through WooCommerce with this plugin, which would require some more setup. And then I would recommend looking at our Selling with WooCommerce, a webinar, to see how that linking works. But it's definitely possible. Okay, so this is the plugin that is actually free to use, and this was recommended by users in the group. I have not used this plugin either, but the last two have been recommended, and this plugin comes highly recommended because of the price or what it is. And I'm not to sound cheap. I think the value of this plugin is a good start, and it's on 10,000 active sites right now. So I think that's a fair number to trust and try something too. Their free version is free. Their supported version is like 39 bucks. And then for $9, they sell add-ons. Each of their add-ons are $9 US, I believe. They have the one that I want to try is the one-time SMS login. So using their $9 add-on, you could put in your phone number. It's going to send you an SMS message. You can click that and then log in instead of having a password and email and stuff. So if you have access to the phone and the phone number, maybe that's a security flaw, but it's also a cool feature. I don't know if that works or not. I do know the basic system of registration works, and the people who have used it, they've said they've been using it a couple of years and very happy with it. So I threw it in because it actually is free, and then the add-ons are not like $9. So if you bought all 3 or 4 add-ons, it's still cheaper than any of the other options, even the Elementor options, because you would have to purchase Elementor first. So if you're on a budget, I think this is an honorable mention plugin that I would definitely I would be willing to check out. I played with it a little bit too. I did install it. It seemed to work. I will say the more inputs you add into the pop-up, it actually scrolls inside the pop-up, but it wasn't clear that it scrolled, so I thought it was missing the button and I had to scroll. But unlike the LearnDash plugin where you just can't see anything and it doesn't scroll, at least this one is currently scrolling inside the frame. So that's cool. Okay, so I want to talk about Gravity Forms a little bit. And again, like I was saying earlier, this is personally one of my favorite options to use user registration. The Gravity Forms add-ons, if you have the agency plan or the elite plan or whatever they're calling it these days, you can actually sell directly through WooCommerce or directly through Gravity Forms through Stripe or Authorize.net or any of those, and it works just fine. I've used this lots of times when I needed a simple, easy, quick shopping cart solution for something. And you can sell access to courses directly through a Gravity Form with our Gravity Form for LearnDash integration. And you can use the widget. So Gravity Forms is going to work in Beaver Builder, Elementor. It's going to work in Gutenberg or the block builder. It's going to work with shortcodes. It's a solid platform with a pretty large team around them. And in fact, I said I'm not trying to affiliate. I'm just being honest. It was my first premium plugin I ever bought, and I still happily give them money. I've been supporting them for well over 10 years. I think it's a good plugin, but there's also other great plugins that do the same thing. So Ninja Forms, Caldera Forms, all these other form libraries all probably do this. So you don't have to use what I'm saying. I'm just showing examples that are different than the last time we did this, and I use several of these in active projects. So for long forms, you want to make sure it's simple, break it up to reduce stress, and if you have the ability to save, now this is going to be some custom work or require an add-on. There is add-ons that you could save progress of sign up if you would like for longer sign up processes. This is what I was talking about as a paged form earlier. So if you happen to use Gravity Forms, there's other forms that also do this. Again, most form builders will do this, but we have integration with Gravity Forms with LearnDash, and you can set up a paged setup process. So you can simplify it, still make it elegant, keep it not, so no one feels overwhelmed, divide it up into sections. And all you have to do is these are buttons. If you click them, an input would show up in the left side, and then you can drag and drop that. So every number you see where it says 1, 2, 3, it actually is just the page button causing like a think of it almost, if you're familiar with the read more link in the post editor, it's a lot like that. You just add pages, and every time you add one of those, it's going to add, it's going to cause a break between the inputs, and it's going to add another number to wherever you want that to show. Again, in our next webinar, we're going to go over exactly how to make these, I think, and I think that'll be a fun time hanging out and making a couple different registration forms. The same form, but in different plugins, seeing how it works, how fast each one is, and if we make any assets, those are always released. They're not supported, but they are, freely used for learning purposes. So group registration. Group registration is a little bit different than the rest of the registration, and I think this can be an entire webinar on itself. Group registration is the ability for one user to sign up and then give access or buy more access for other users as sub-accounts for themselves. Sometimes you can set up, like this could be good for like a family buying access to things. So you want to sell like a family pass of something. So let's say a parent would sign up and then they would have 3 or 4 kids and they'd buy a pass, and their kids become sub-accounts. The parents can check on their progress, and then everyone's using the courses accordingly. Now, I do feel I should have said this earlier, and I have a slide or a tip about this coming up. Is Uncanny Owl also has an Uncanny Owl toolkit that a lot of our users use on their site to get started as a catch-all, and it used to do it does a lot, but since the evolution of WordPress and LearnDash, some of the features that it does aren't quite as relevant anymore. And I'm not talking negative about it at all. Where I'm going with that is be careful about bloat and feature overlap. I mean, if you install a couple things because you want this one feature, but you've also installed a couple other user registration things, and then you wanted to theme your login, there's a chance that some of these features might overlap. So just be very careful, test. If you're not using something, take it off. A lot of the features too, a lot of these add-on plugins that give you suites of things give you the ability to turn off and on features. So if you were to use any of their tool groups or any of the Elementor add-on packs, go in there and turn off everything you're not using, because it's going to cause bloat. It's going to load a bunch of files it doesn't need. Again, by no means is that talking bad about anything. Just turn off what you're not using, and your site's going to be more efficient. Now, both of these plugins do about the same thing. I would look at their feature list and compare and see which one you need. I think they both do bulk user imports. They both do sub-accounts. They both do the ability to have more reports. But I really think you would need to review them personally to see which one would fit your goals for your project best. But if you ever have the need to sell groups of courses or groups of seats for your course, one of these 2 plugins would be it. Now, we also have something called groups in LearnDash. Our groups is not the same thing as this groups. Our groups really means groups of courses that one person can buy. Their groups are groups of seats for courses. So the LearnDash groups really are more like a membership or an access, and this is more like seats that you can be given out to however you see fit. Some cool features is when you have a program like this where you have somebody who has seats, or let's say you're reserving like 20 seats for a class and your students sign up, and when you sell them or however you end up doing that yourself, you could send that person a link. They click that link. It's unique to that course. It's unique to them. It's unique to that situation. They can register now, and when they register, it's going to reduce that seat count. It's already set up so it's tied to whatever group was already created, and it's a nice process. And both of these plugins have front-end user tools to help you manage that. And again, I'm not going to say which one is better or worse or any of that. I can tell you I have not used either of these plugins, but I have used plugins by both of these companies. So I have not had a need to sell subsets of groups of seats yet, but these are the two front runners, and they're both about the same. I believe they're both about 150-ish, on that, maybe a little bit more. Okay, we talked about that. So we have about 5 minutes or so. Yeah, we get about 5 minutes. So what I would like to do is show the LearnDash pop-up real fast, and how everyone can install that. So if you're starting from scratch, how can I make my LearnDash pop-up work? And while we're doing that, though, if anyone has any questions, because the rest of the time is just for you, that's my presentation. I'm going to do a little bit of demo work for 5 minutes. I'll be happy to answer some questions. And I do think we're going to do a live stream where we demo everything that we went over today. So feel free to ask questions. If not, I'm going to load up the demo. I have some stuff already here. So let's find the instructions. The instructions are linked in the slides. And let me zoom in a little bit. And we have we have a little video here that's made by Joe, one of our other trainers, and that'll walk you through. It's only like a maybe 2 or 3 minute video, at most 5, of what I'm going over right now, without the entire webinar attached, if you will. You can see how the actual process works, explaining how the process, how everything is set up. So the actual menu pop-up instructions are at the very bottom, and we'll go over that, and then we'll actually start doing it. You would have to go and add a menu, and you're going to add some shortcode to the actual menu tag and some classes. And as long as you have WordPress 3.0 plus installed and active, and you have the theme, the newest theme in the admin and active, not the legacy theme, as long as you have those two things on, you should be able to trigger the pop-up by adding this to your navigation. And so you would go to your menus in the admin, you would make sure that you would add a new custom link. And we'll do this in a second because we have a couple minutes. And here's the original user registration webinar that I was talking about earlier. Cool, so let's close this. Okay, so where I'm going to do this is I'm going to work on a local machine. I have a local environment set up. So let me go ahead and log in here. And one thing I want everyone to see is, even though this is themed a little uniquely, you can see that as I click register or lost password, it's all the same. This is being styled currently with this plugin, and then the logo is probably being, I think, is actually being added with our pop-up. I'd have to check on that. But the extra fields and stuff is being triggered by this auto login new user thing. So if you can see, like, this is the same view, and that's why we showed it in this webinar. In case someone was able to get to this, we would want to make sure that this view also works. One other thing that I learned as well is there's the newest version of LearnDash. I'm sorry, I don't know when this happened, but in WordPress core, you can use your username and or email address to log in now. Before it was just your username, but now as part of core, you can use your username or email. So I thought that was neat. Oh, I know why. This is the demo site. This isn't my local site. Silly me. So you can see the difference here. This is the default, and we're going to turn it into over here. Nope, that's the login. And that doesn't matter because I'm on a local machine. The logins are just for this local anyway, so. Okay, so now we're logged in. In order to make all that work, so what we're going to also do is open this in an incognito window so we can see what this looks like by itself. So right now, I don't think there's a pop-up added. We'll go over here to, oh, I'm logged in, log out. Okay, so the pop-up is working here. Okay, so I wasn't quite prepared. So let's look at something. I want to turn off registration. So let's say you had your pop-up added and it wasn't working. And I'll show you what I mean by wasn't working. I just want to try to troubleshoot. We have a couple minutes. I want to at least show. Maybe this is a local browser too. I think that's the problem. I think I was viewing both of them in a private window. Okay. So and we're going to work a little backwards here. But let's say you added your pop-up and you went to go test your pop-up out. You click login and it only showed half. Why does my pop-up only show half? That's because you haven't technically enabled user registration. So earlier, when someone asked, do we need to use the WordPress user registration? No, you don't. You can use the login pop-up, and you can make your own pop-ups, and you can use WooCommerce or any other membership plugin to register, or you can use the systems to register. So if I click anyone can register, that enables the default system to allow anyone in the site to register again. I'll refresh, and now I can register again. Okay, so how did we get this plugin pop-up to show up here? That shows up here, well, really just because of this button. But what if we wanted to add it and trigger it to the menu? So let's go ahead and make that same pop-up show up in the menu. And what we're also going to do is move away from the other pop-up so we know that it's not actually there. So we're going to go to Appearance, Menu. We're going to add a new pop-up to the actual menu. Okay, so let me get my documentation in one of these mini windows. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. And all the instructions are right here. And if you hover over this, you'll see the pound sign. So actually, I'll make sure that that's included. But this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be adding the using the shortcode as a menu item. So I want to say I want to log in and log out. It's what it's going to want us to do is add a custom link. So I'm going to say custom link, and I'm going to say that this is my pound login, because that's what step number 5 says. I mean, number 1 through whatever is literally just getting us to this page. It's 8 steps, but it's really not. And then you want to say login here. Now, what you'll notice is not everything else is actually what we need it to be. As you can see, is it wants us to add all this other stuff. I don't have the ability to add the other stuff. What that means is my screen options aren't showing them. So I'll go up to the top right, click screen options, and I want to make sure that I can have my CSS class, my description, and I think that's all we need to make this work. Cool. So I'm going to close my screen options. And then something else that's kind of fun is we're going to use this shortcode in the description here. And what this shortcode does is it says, if I'm logged in, use the label logged in. If I'm logged out, or if for a log out, use the label logged out. So it's going to automatically swap. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot. It's going to automatically swap this word log in with log out using this shortcode here. So I don't have to worry about the state of that navigation item being in my navigation. And then I could also add the button class if I wanted it to look more like a button. So the actual class button is optional. So fingers crossed, this should work. Let's go ahead and save. We'll come over here to our site, hit refresh. We should have a login button now. Now we have a pop-up. And now we have the registration. And if I, again, we already went through that. So the other thing that I would like to do now is I would like to extend that user registration to match the LearnDash user registration. So again, I'm just doing this in real time, talking through it, so it's a little bit slow, but we'll get through it together. The interesting thing is I'm on a local, so if I do any type of email sending, it's not going to actually send. Install. And again, I'm in a testing environment. Please make sure if you're going to install plugins, you're in a development environment, you have a safe backup, you've tested everything, you're not launching a course tomorrow, before you do your updates. Okay. Now, I don't really know where those settings are. I think they're right here. Oh, cool. So what we can just do is say, there's a redirect behavior after login. We can say my account. I want to enable first name so they can fill out the first name. Last name I'm not too worried about right now, and I want them to be able to pick their password. Check this box if your users set your password, change your password. Okay. We'll leave that alone. We'll hit save. We're going to come over back to our site. We're going to refresh. Click login, click register. And now we have all those extra inputs. Let's get rid of the name for a second. Hit save. Hit exit. If the pop-up ever gets in the way, it does have keyboard controls. You can hit exit or escape and it'll close. I refreshed, clicking the link again, and you can see the form a little better. But you get the idea. We were able to extend this or in any form using this. There's probably a little bug I can figure out, but that puts us right at the 55-minute mark. And we were able to do a quick demo showing how to extend the login registration and how to turn it off and on and how to fix it if the registration isn't showing, why it wouldn't be showing. And then the last thing I'll show, just to clarify, because I know we're going about this pop-up backwards, which I should have probably started in the total reverse order in which I'm explaining it. But you would go to settings. You would make sure that the active template is at least the LearnDash 3.0. There's only 2, but you used to be able to make your own. I'm not saying you can't, but that's what this is. And then your different settings are here. Make sure it's turned on, add your logo, and that's where all these settings are coming from. So if you have any questions, please let us know. How do I get the join the mailing list button? That's part of this plugin. believe this plugin has it, but I didn't look at the settings to see what it does or how it configures, but there was a checkbox there. Now, if you were, and I could be reading that wrong, I'd have to double check for sure. If you did want a checkbox for a newsletter, like that might be the Gravity Forms route, or that might be the memberships route, or an e-commerce solution. This plugin probably also has something, or one of the others would probably have it. It's a common feature, but I don't know how far this free plugin will go in its actual tasks. Let's check one thing. I can report back. So let me ask how that was there. If you're referring to the one on the demo site, I can check and report back to you. At this point, I don't actually know. I'll have to check. I don't know. But that puts us at time. I really appreciate everyone's time in joining us today. If you have any questions I didn't get to, please ask them in the group. Feel free to post them wherever the link to this video is posted, or tag me in a post in the Facebook group, and I'll be happy to answer it. On behalf of LearnDash and everything and everyone here, we encourage everyone to participate and ask new suggestions for future webinar. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, everyone.